Okay. Good morning. Hello. Welcome. Week 6. So I'm hoping that this is more of a positive week in the sense that everything up until this point has been around understanding all the obstacles that present themselves in a meditation practice. So in week 2, when we were just working with just the breath, we were bringing to awareness just all the different obstacles, distractions that come up, thoughts, feelings, sensations. Tuning into the body a bit more into week 3, we then started to notice some of the sensations that surface more deeply in the body and how they can take us away. Week 4, as we tuned into mindfulness of feelings and some of us switched meditation postures, we also noticed how switching a posture can change the experience of a meditation. Last week, week 5, we touched upon mind states, which was still for me a bit of a tricky subject to try to communicate. But the idea with that is that our states of mind cannot be taken personally. They could be just due to a host of environmental factors, personal life factors, but they are just like anything else. They are something that we learn to build a relationship to and learn how to work with. But then if the past few weeks have been around understanding all of these different patterns, whether it's a pattern of thought, a pattern of feeling, a pattern of sensation, or the pattern of mind energy, if we can notice what these patterns are and how they create reactivity around us, then we can also then begin to tune into what supports us to bring us clarity and steadiness within a meditation practice. So it's not all doom and gloom when we sit to meditate of just trying to get rid of everything. After a certain point in time, once we do steady the mind, other things start to come up that do support the function of our meditation practice. So what the Buddhists would consider this to be would be Dhamma, which is like a natural law. And when we step out of line with the natural law, we are like punished then and there. In the sense of if we start to fuel the negativity within our mind, we are punished then and there because more fluctuation is created within the mind. And so if we're able to focus on the mental qualities that create clarity of mind, we are also rewarded in that moment as well of being clear-minded. Whereas if we double down on all the stuff that clouds our mind when we practice meditation, we are just further entering more cloudiness within our mind. Does that make sense? So how we end up working with this meditation practice, at least for today, is that yes, we can approach it from the most superficial aspect of, as I mentioned last week, stress management, emotional regulation, finding those kind of surface level qualities. But if we can tap into some of the deeper qualities that are there within a meditation practice, some of those deeper qualities are what will lead to, you can say, like lasting freedom, lasting peace. It's not just temporary peace, temporary freedom. So this is where we can start to talk about, they're known as the 7 factors of awakening. The Buddha described these as qualities that naturally develop as mindfulness develops. So these are qualities that are inherent within all of us, but they may be clouded over, they may be covered up by some of the obstacles that we have to overcome in the initial path of our meditation. So I'll give you a very digestible version of what these 7 factors are that assist us in our awakening. And then we can go a bit more of how to practice cultivating these qualities within our practices and better yet within daily life. So in no particular order, although they do kind of work, they can be cultivated at the same time, but we can always prioritize cultivating one at a certain time if needed. So we can develop a whole meditation practice around one quality of awakening, or to, have a lifestyle in which we can cultivate little bits of all of these qualities. And some of them we've been doing. So the first one is I'll give like a Buddhist perspective on it, of just like the wording of it, and then what it would translate into in a more English word. Sati, which is the Pali word, the Buddhist text, it would be sati, S-A-T-I. And what that just essentially translates into is mindfulness. And within our practice, we are being mindful of being present, of coming back to our practice and staying in this body and keeping our mind within our body as we practice. And so we've been trying to develop a foundation in which we are mindful of what we are doing when we are sitting and breathing, or when we are walking around, when we're moving around, when we're talking to people, when we're doing all of our daily activities. I'm probably going to butcher some of the words, but that's okay. Dhamma vichaya, which is a sense of mindful investigation. So it's the ability to be curious around an experience that we're going through instead of being resistant to it. So when it comes to, working within our meditation practices, it's not to say that every single thought that comes up has to be immediately ignored. There may eventually or occasionally come a thought that actually has some merit to sit with. That isn't necessarily what we want to do all the time, nor do we want to get carried away by our thoughts. But there is occasionally a thought, a feeling, something that surfaces within your meditation practice where you might just take a moment to say, okay, what is this trying to tell me? Because there are sometimes thoughts that keep coming back. And you can only keep pushing away something so many times until you have no choice but to sit with it, to confront it, and do so in a mindful way. So Dhamma vichaya would be that quality within our meditation practice or within even daily life. And from a place of mindfulness, we can be curious about what we are going through, whether it's the experience, whether we can be curious around a thought that has popped up in the mind, or a feeling that has surfaced within us. So far, so okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. The one that matters a lot for beginners is virya, which is energy or effort. And it's about having the right effort. So within Buddhist philosophy, there is a right way to do it, and then there is a wrong way to do it. Right effort is just the ability to show up and try time and time and time and time again. But it is a very gentle attitude to have towards trying. Wrong effort is that you're like slamming yourself like head into a wall, trying, but you're not getting anywhere. So then you're trying that much harder, which doesn't always help us. It is simply the fact that you are showing up without any expectation that today when I try, I'm not looking for a certain outcome with this meditation practice. Whatever happens, happens. Doesn't matter what you're dealing with internally or externally. Each meditation practice that you go through can be of some benefit to you. You just have to have the proper effort and energy to approach the meditation. So it does take a bit of honesty within you to understand that no two meditations are going to be alike. And so we can't hang ourselves on the expectation that what I experienced in my last meditation is what I will experience in this meditation. Because if all your effort is going towards trying to find that experience that you had before, you may end up straying yourself further and further away from the experience you're actually having in this moment. Fourth quality, piti, which would just be a sense of joy, a sense of uplifting. In this sense, it's about having a lighthearted approach to our practice, that even when things are, a bit more on the somber side within us, or just heavier within us, that we can't get swept away by all of that. And so I think something like piti can bring us into just being grateful for the opportunity that we possess in having this moment to breathe and be. And so I think a lot of these qualities, they help when we can find the perspective of gratitude around them. in which, yes, we're going through maybe a difficult meditation or a difficult period in our life, but there is a little silver lining that is sometimes hard to find. And that may require you a bit of time to take a step back to find out what that silver lining is for you. But that silver lining can maybe take some of the seriousness out of what you're feeling or what you're thinking or what you're going through to give you a bit more lightness of mind, lightness of body as you go through it. Going through a body scan and you start to feel discomfort in the part that you're scanning. Yes, it's annoying in the moment or it's upsetting in the moment, but the part of you inside that can say, at least I'm still able to connect to my body in this way. That there may come a point in time later in life where my body isn't as, building of a wholesome relationship to me, where I am unable to deal with it. Whereas right now I can deal with the discomfort. I can deal with seeing this discomfort for what it is. It's something impermanent. And we've spoken about that in the past. So in that sense, that lighthearted approach can help to lessen some of the burden that gets created within a meditation experience, or to even take some of the weight off of your mind or off of your heart as you meditate. Passaddhi, which would be a sense of calmness or tranquility. And as much as we're trying to understand these things from the perspective of what we may experience within a meditation practice, understand that some of these qualities can be probably felt when we are moving through daily life. So in the sense of if we're able to cultivate a sense of tranquility and calm within us, that we don't react to thoughts when they pop up within our mind, no matter how real the thought feels, or that we don't start to become overly restless when the body starts to make noise, then there's every possibility of having that sense of tranquility carried with you when you then walk into daily life. That when you're asked to wait in line for longer than you have to be, that you're not just restlessly waiting for the line to get shorter, but that you can just exist in the line and be mindful of that moment there. Or that when somebody is saying something that you disagree with, that you don't just instantly jump into a state of reactivity, but that you can keep some sense of composure and tranquility. You can still voice your disagreement, you can still voice your side of the opinion, but it doesn't come from an emotional standpoint. And I guess in week 4, we had described just the difference in nuance between feelings and emotions. And so a person who is calm, composed, and tranquil, they may still feel things within them. They may still feel anger. They may still feel agitated, restless, all of that. But their behavior doesn't come from that emotional standpoint. So it's that ability to create a little bit of buffer between what you feel in terms of mental sensations, physical sensations, to then respond rather from a place which is a bit more grounded, a bit more mindful. Samadhi, which is something that we're doing time and time again, which is the ability to develop concentration, which is what we do physically within the meditation practice. And this sense of concentration around our breath, around our body, the idea being that we can then build a bit more mastery over the mind. And the challenge with this is that we have to spend a lot of time here in learning to develop this sense of concentration. It's one thing if you were introduced to meditation when you were a toddler, but by the time you've started meditating, as some of us have in this room, there's a lot of knots that have been created within us. And we have to be able to work with loosening up those knots. And it takes a lot of time because we're just constantly coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, because we get distracted from the breath, distracted from the breath, distracted from the breath. But eventually the point would be is that distinguishing fact of you needing to come back to the breath is just you being here. So what I mean by that is that you don't have to tell yourself that you've been distracted. You don't have to go through all of those extra steps, but that you're able to just start again. That there's no need for you needing to be upset that you've been distracted, disheartened that you've been distracted. You just acknowledge the distraction, cut through it with a sharp knife, and then start again building that sense of concentration on your breath, on your body, whatever it may be. And then I think the all-encompassing quality, which echoes back to some of those ideas of there are certain things within us, whether it's experience, feelings, thoughts that we crave, that we are attracted to, that we desire, versus there are other things that we are averse to, resistant to, fearful of. And the overarching quality that will allow us to deal with those two spectrums of pain and pleasure, good and bad, right and wrong, whatever you want to call it, is upekkha, which is equanimity. Equanimity being the mental balance factor. So what that means is, and I think I echoed it in one of the lectures on our body scans or just working with feelings, is that right now we're in a seated situation that I would consider a neutral feeling that we said. And this neutral feeling can be changed with pleasant sensation, with unpleasant sensation. And so what I used an example for that week was like the sun. So say you're sitting here, and while you're sitting, the sun, the warmth of the sun starts to touch your skin. That is pleasant for the most part. But that pleasant feeling of the warm sun can shift into an unpleasant feeling the moment the sun disappears. And it's your ability to treat both halves as neither one being better than the other. It just simply is. And so it's your ability to come back to this neutral state. And neutral doesn't have to be seen as something boring, dull, or uninteresting, but it's just neutral being reality as it is. It is your mind that ends up painting what is pleasant, what is unpleasant, and we just come back to this moment in which there is no sun, but everything is still perfectly fine. So, those being the 7 major qualities, factors that do present themselves as we work through deeper practices of meditation and mindfulness. So the factor of mindfulness, the factor of curiosity, of being investigative of our experiences, the factor of having right energy, right effort within our practices, the factor of joy, of uplifting, of lightheartedness, the factor of calm and tranquility that we can cultivate, both on and off the mat, the factor of concentration, being able to that much effectively cut through distractions, cut through reactive patterns to come back into the moment, and then ultimately all of that leading us into a state of equanimity, of mental balance, mental calm, mental peace. So, the main thing that we need to understand, if these are things that are within us inherently, they aren't necessarily achievements that we need to go looking for. So we don't approach our practice trying to become a more calm person, a more tranquil person, a more mindful person, given that these are qualities already within us. So sometimes when we go seeking the thing, we are forcing the thing that is already within us. So we're creating that inner sense of resistance to what is already within us. They are qualities that start to emerge within us when we practice honestly. So it's like, I think I've used the example as well, if we were to grow a plant, all we can do is create the conditions for the plant to grow. You cannot then start going into the garden and be like, grow, flower, grow. That effort's wasted. It is forcing something that doesn't make any sense to force. You can still till the soil, you can still water, you can still make sure that there's, maybe a protective netting surrounding it so that the squirrel doesn't come and eat it, whatever it might be. But you can create all the conditions for the plant to grow, but ultimately you can't force the plant to grow. So in this sense, mindfulness will help us notice things. It gives you the energy to notice, the perspective to notice if something needs to be changed. Mindfulness in itself will not change anything for you. It just gives you the perspective of something could change here. Our second quality then, the investigation. If mindfulness helps you to notice, that investigation part of you will bring curiosity to noticing what may need to change. The energy of our practice of our mindfulness there can then engage us with this investigation. And I'm trying to layer these things on top of one another, so that when we do start to go deeper into the practice, we've become aware, we've started to investigate, we become engaged with our investigation. We don't need to become disheartened by what we're investigating. So if there is something that is negative within you that you wish needs to change, say you are an angry person and your mindfulness practice, your meditation practice brings to light that anger within you. You don't have to become overwhelmed by the anger. You don't have to be disheartened by the anger. But you do need to have a light-hearted approach to your anger. You cannot become angry at your anger. That's just going to further perpetuate anger. But if we can approach anger, even something that is something we don't associate as being kind or uplifting, if we can still approach anger from a light-hearted place, a place in which we ourselves don't have any animosity towards our anger, then it will allow us the opportunity to quell the anger, so we steady it, so that we're not trying to force the anger out, but we're trying to calm the anger itself down. And then in that sense, if our whole mindfulness practice is about developing a relationship to different parts of ourselves, then that samadhi, that understanding of how to work with the mind would help you more deeply understand the root of your anger. Anger doesn't come from nowhere. It may come from a trigger, may come from a past experience, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago or whatever with the toothless chihuahua and all that kind of stuff. And if we can come to a root understanding of what creates our anger or what causes our anger, then equanimity is that overwhelming quality that the next time something comes up, you have the choice of remaining balanced mentally, that you don't get as involved with the trigger when it comes up. No doubt it's a lot to take in because there's 7 things that I'm talking about, and it may almost seem like they're all happening all at once. But like I said, if we can understand that these qualities are already within us, then it's a very gradual process. And we've already begun the gradual process, whether we know it or not, by taking the first steps of sitting, breathing, being mindful with ourselves. It's just that the challenge is, it's one thing to work here in this domain of my body, my mind. So I'm working within what is happening here. And it is another thing, although not so different, but it feels a lot different when we have to apply the lessons that we are learning here out there. Because reality is the distractions within us, no different than the distractions outside of us. But we become a lot more triggered sometimes by the distractions that are outside of us. And it's just about understanding that every distraction, every trigger is a practicing point. But it's sometimes very hard to be able to see the practice when we become triggered like that. And so it takes time. Internally, you might be getting better with your issues of anger, your issues of anxiety, your stress. And so you're able to show yourself the grace when you maybe slip up. But when things are outside of your control and they inflame you that much more, it is harder to create a bit more of a buffer. So we have to be mindful in the sense that, like I said, this is gradual. There are lessons that we learn within us. There are lessons that we learn from family members. There are lessons that we learn from strangers and friends. But we overall learn to embody what we practice within us to then extend all of those lessons outwards when we encounter all of these different scenarios of daily life. Question?
You could tell I was thinking.
Yeah, always. Because this is my last part before we can join in on a meditation.
It's so interesting because we are all here clearly committed to wanting to make ourselves better and to make on a certain level, the world's a better place, right? By the energy that we put out there. And I think it's just in such sharp contrast to not to get into politics or like just the geopolitical climate, right? So it's like that range is widening. I don't know what the right word is, but you know what I mean? It's like I feel like we're further apart. We're growing further apart as a world. And so I'm like, but there's so many stupid people that trigger me. Like that's all I kept thinking about, right? And it's like they're not just stupid to me, they're stupid to the masses.
Yeah.
So it's just I did, because when you caught me, that face was just a moment of defeatist attitude of like, yes, but like we're faced with even more challenges and those triggers than ever before because they don't even make sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't. And so the barrier you're talking about, the buffer, it's just, I was just.
It is. It's very challenging because, I don't wish to get too much into geopolitics at this time, but no matter how much you disagree with anybody's actions, words, behaviors, whatever it is, somewhere, each of these peoples were tiny children at one point. And somewhere along the path from childhood to where they are now, doing the actions and the words and all that, something went wrong. Wrong, you can say, right? And so it's the thing is, you're going to have a very hard time changing the person. But it's such a convoluted topic, I guess, of just how to even approach it. But
it'd be different if it was a person. It's society, right? Like one person pissing off would be easy, right? But now it's a system, exactly, and a society, and it's just, that makes it so much harder. But I think that also then proves your point of why what you're teaching us is also so important because we are being challenged further, right?
Yeah.
So I see the flip side of it.
And
it's just unfortunate.
I think in that sense of when we bend to the system, we end up changing ourselves. And I guess what a practice like this offers you is the buffer that you do not need to bend to the system. You're still aware of what is happening around you, geopolitically, systemically, and all that. But all you can do is change your behaviors, your actions, your thoughts, your words. And it may feel insignificant, but it's something very meaningful. I remember one of my last, maybe 2 meditation courses ago, but I don't remember what my meditation was on. I can't remember, but it compelled one of the ladies enough that she was walking through like Oakville, saw a homeless person, gave him a blanket. But it's like that is change, right? You can wait for an organization to hand out blankets to people, but if you have a blanket that you're willing to part with for a person who may need it more, you've created positive change. And so in that sense, it's that is kind of the real essence of mindfulness and what we're trying to do here. We cannot change anything other than us. No matter how well our intentions are, how good our wishes are to want other things to change, systems, institutions, people, friends, family, strangers, all you can do is be an example of the change that you have created within yourself. And then that's kind of what Gandhi ended up saying was that, let my life be my message, let my actions be my message, not what I say, not what not any of that, and no amount of theory or philosophy, but let the actions of my be my message. And ultimately, we don't need to get into that rabbit hole either. But this whole practice is about being able to balance our inner world with our outer worlds, and there's a lot of disharmony between the two. And it's very easy to get swept up by the chaos of the outer world and let it come into your inner world. It's like, we once again go back to the garden, and we end up not having fences around our garden, and we end up just letting all the other things of other people's gardens and all the other people's messes come into our garden. And we at least need to hold strong the fences that we put up, not in the sense that they are, closed doors and borders, but in the sense that they are keeping us sane. I don't know.
If I may, you're teaching us and learning how to accept the moment and deal with it, whether it's an irritation, a thought of it. But on the bigger picture, quite frankly, and because that thought or that action is just passing, so deal with it and move on, because it's just passing. In the bigger picture, quite frankly, our life is passing. It's our whole life is just passing. It's moments that will pass and we finally die. So with this realization, at least I am trying to learn, not just deal with that particular moment, just deal with this phase that I'm in, because ultimately it's going to end, and that's better. And with regard to the systems and the unfairness, injustice blows my mind. That I find very hard to deal with, because person is not getting their due. That drives me crazy. But as far as the system is concerned, to your point, we can't change others, you just change yourself and how you approach it. But there has to be peace of mind when you change. Even when you change, you have to, at the end of the day, get some peace of mind. And that's very difficult in today's world, because the peace is not there.
Yeah, it's
very hard to find. All of us are here because some way or the other we want peace of mind, and it's very difficult.
Well, peace is there. It's within you, but it's been buried. As children, we had peace, and there's still a part of you that is a child within you. So we know what peace feels like. We haven't lost it completely, but the peace without attachments, peace without any restrictions, it's just buried. It's buried over the stress of life, the responsibilities of life, the weight of other people's lives put on our shoulders, put on our minds. But it's not to say that peace isn't there within us. It is. I truly believe it. Peace of mind is within us, but our mind doesn't just have peace in it. It has peace and it has chaos as well. And it's very easy to look at peace, but it's also very seductive to look at all the chaos. And we have to be able to understand that there are times when we might need to give our energy towards all of these things that, demand our attention, from geopolitics, from the world, from society. But if we can't give ourselves that respite of knowing that there is some sense of peace within us, then we will be seeking our whole lives. And at least one of the things that this mindfulness and meditation practice has done for me is that there is the possibility of finding peace in just one breath. And that may be all you can afford in a very chaotic day or in a very chaotic hour or whatever it may be, but you cannot discredit the value of the peace that can be found in one breath. No doubt we would want more. I want 2 breaths of peace. But now you've created suffering within yourself that you're not allowing yourself to enjoy the 1 breath of peace. Right? It's the game can become that simple, in which 1 is not enough and we want 2 so that we're not satisfied with 1. But that shouldn't discredit how much weight that 1 breath of peace can hold in the chaos of your whole day. No doubt we would want all the breaths to be peaceful breaths, all the moments in our day to be peaceful. But we have to learn to find the moments of peace that we can when they're there for us. Okay, I don't want to talk about anything more in terms of theme for today. I've covered most of it. This leads us to our guided meditation practice for today. Any questions just beforehand? No? Yes?
Can I just give a gentle reminder to make sure our phones are silent?
Yeah, please, sorry. Yeah, I usually forget to mention that. Yeah, it's just a very triggering sound for a lot of us as it is. So just please, in case, yeah. All good. Just as we always do when it comes to preparing for our practice, we do so by settling ourselves in. So what that means for some of us is that we first need to take a few moments to settle into our bodies, which may require you to adjust your meditation posture, changing the position of your legs, changing the position of your arms, using your backrest, using the wall for support. And please don't be disheartened if you need to change your meditation posture, but just doing so with a calm state of mind, that you're not restlessly changing your posture, but that you can mindfully change your posture. And even when it comes to working with the body itself over these first couple of minutes, we try our best to not blindly react. So if you do notice something surfacing on the body, take a few moments, pause, sit with it, breathe with it. And if it subsides, all is good. If it doesn't, then let that be a sign that you can mindfully shift. And then for others, as the body begins to settle, we can bring awareness to our breath. Our breath being that very important anchor within us. A very simple anchor, but a very effective anchor in grounding us. In bringing our minds into our bodies. And with the best of intentions, keeping our mind within our bodies. So just continuing to breathe as you ground your body, as you settle into your breath. So from this place of mindfulness within you, let us invite some investigation. And when it comes to investigating, we are trying to encourage curiosity. So nothing needs to be corrected, nothing needs to be changed. We're just curious of our experience as we look within. And in the most basic sense of this moment right here, just notice what the mind is like right now. And it's not that you need to look for any particular answer, you're just inquiring. Does the mind feel calm? Does it feel a bit And understanding, as we've spoken about in previous weeks, that the mind isn't just limited to the thinking mind. It extends out towards the feeling mind as well. Different parts of the body carry a mind as well. When it comes to the overall quality of your meditation practice, how is your energy in this moment? Does the mind feel sharp, alert, attentive? Or does it feel a bit dull, drowsy, tired? And sometimes we are able to influence some of these things. We can be a bit more energetic with our breath if needed. Contrastingly, if the energy is too high, we can also be mindful with our breathing to soften. And as we continue to settle through this experience of our meditation, notice what starts to shift, what starts to change. So for some of us that may have had a bit of restlessness in the mind, maybe some of it subsides and it feels a bit calmer. The mind that may have been distracted by different thoughts or feelings has become a bit more interested in just the breath and body. For some of us, the mind that may have been very quick to react has become a bit more steady. But if there is some resistance, just notice what it may be. What may be stopping you from experiencing a sense of peace in this moment right here? even the subtlest of shifts within our mind and body matter. Does the mind feel a bit more clear? A little more steady? Is there a little more balance within? As always, as we come out of our meditation, we can take a few moments to bring our hands together to create some heat and energy within our palms, and allowing for that heat to wash over your face as you take your time to reopen your eyes. So if there's something that we can try to understand from a practice like this, for most of us, nothing needs to be added. We don't need to add anything to our practice to find some of these qualities within us. It's oftentimes the absence of something, which is typically those distractions or just some of those initial obstacles. If those are no longer there, then some of these inherent qualities come up to the surface. So in the first couple of minutes of a meditation practice, you might notice that you're a bit restless physically or mentally. And what we can start to do is just tap into breath. So we establish a mindfulness of our breath. And in doing so, creating a softer breath will hopefully allow the mind to soften and quiet down a little bit. Remember, even the subtlest of shifts matter. So we're not looking to go from 100 to 0, but if you just go from 100 to 99, that's still change. It's not as much as you hope for, but it's what you have no choice but to accept today. For some of us, it's about the body being very dull, drowsy, and it requires a lot more effort in you for having to sit upright, to being open, so that you can receive the energy of your practice with a bit more clarity. I don't know what that noise was towards the end of our practice, but things like that can create irritation. They can take you right out of your flow. And that is a learning lesson for us to be mindful of equanimity, that we don't get distracted by that sound. Was it a duck? Was it a bird? I don't even know.
It was a car truck backing up.
Maybe, right? I don't know what it was, but something as simple as that sound that, may have lasted 10 seconds or something like that has the potential of taking us out of all the progress that we make within a meditation practice. But when it comes to these kind of qualities, they're as I've said, they're not just for this meditation cushion alone. They cannot be. Their benefits will be very short-lived if we only keep them here. But they're for how we deal with tough conversations. They're about how we deal with the stress of extraordinary and even ordinary life. But if we can notice the conditions that allow for these qualities to arise within us here, we can still tap into some of those things that, some of those ways of creating those qualities within us when we're out there. In terms of your own meditation practice for today, were you able to notice when something needed to be changed, when an adjustment had to be made, whether it was a mental adjustment of letting go of a thought, when it was a more of maybe a feeling type of adjustment of not giving something too much energy, or of needing to adjust the posture or something of that sort? Were there parts of the practice that were a bit more easy to notice? So in terms of sometimes it's very easy to notice when a thought is distracting you versus when the body is starting to fall asleep and we fall victim to that. If anybody has anything, Noreen, yeah.
I found myself oscillating, so every once in a while I would think, as soon as I leave here I should send this text so I can get my afternoon worked out and planned. Then, wait a minute, I can do that later, I don't think that's now. And then I go back to that peaceful state, and then a minute will pass and something happens to me and I wish it didn't happen that way. I don't have to think about that now. So yes, between them, each let's just try to stay present.
Yeah. And that's kind of what this whole practice boils down to, right? It's mindfulness is just about coming back to this moment. And there's moments of going from mindful to the mind drifting away, and you just reel the mind back in. But it doesn't have to come from any place of being upset at the mind or averse to the mind or, angry at the mind, but we're just saying, no, come back, just for 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, let's just work with this, and then those text messages can be sent, those plans can be done. So it's very much about having that lighthearted approach, even when we ourselves are what are causing our own distractions to come up.
Do you find, because it's for both of us our second cycle of math class, do you find that you come back faster? Because I find that. Before, it used to be a runaway for me, and I wouldn't realize that I'm doing it. But now, instantly, I'm like, oh no, come back. And it's more instant for me to come back. It's easier. It's way easier and more mindful of it happening, whereas before I feel like in our first...
Your knife has gotten sharper.
Yes.
You've polished off your knife, right? It would have taken, before you would have been trying to cut through your distractions with a butter knife. And you're trying to come back, but it's taking a while for you to do it. But nowadays, most distractions come up, they get sliced through then and there, and you're able to come back. So that is a progress on the path of you cultivating this mastery of your mind, if we want to call it that you don't let your mind run amok. That you are not the slave to your mind, but you are telling your mind that no distractions for now. For now, we focus on this. And in doing so and having that mastery over your mind, all of those other things can stay present as well.
I think for me, it was more, I was also oscillating between thoughts. And it's funny because sourdough, and so I kept thinking about inclusions, and then I would have to bring myself back, and I was like, that's okay, you can like think about that later. But it was coming back almost in an agnostic way without judgment is what I felt like I was curiously sort of realizing today. It was just like, okay, you're recognizing it, you're coming back. There's no judgment like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, or like, this is bad kind of situations. I think you recognized it, you would come back to the breath. And I don't know if anyone else has a similar sensation, but I've been noticing is even if I sit in darkness and meditate, when I come back into myself, it gets darker behind my eyelids. Whereas, so it kind of almost feels like symbolic, because like I try to focus on my third eye when I come back, and there's also this like shift between like lightness and stuff like that, which also physically helps me come back.
I think a lot of people, when they first try to meditate, they have a very difficult time of relaxing their eyelids. It's one thing to close your eyes, but like I see this a lot. You know, it's like people trying, the energy here is the effort here is too much. And this ends up creating more tension where we're literally holding on to tension here. But it's this very tranquil kind of close, like when a baby is asleep. No effort of any tension on the face. And that is one of the things that we have to learn, is to soften all of these tension points that are, at this point, they're just unconscious habits that we've created that we bring awareness to create further, deeper senses of softness. I think if there's a core message for this week, the simplest thing is that, you know, this isn't anything dramatic that we're trying to cultivate within us. These are steady, slow drips of awareness, curiosity, effort, joy, tranquility, stability, equanimity. And all of that begins with mindfulness. All of these qualities are an extension of us being first mindful. And from that mindful space within us, all of these qualities can naturally arise. So in that sense, I think, you know, mindfulness doesn't just show us our habits. It also reveals the qualities that free us from our habits. So some of the habits that generate our reactivity, that you know, those thoughts that spiral us out of control, or those feelings that overwhelm us. Mindfulness does a great job at revealing those things to us, but it also can reveal how we can free ourselves from them when we focus on some of these other things within us. So for next week's class, we're going to shift from up here, which is what we typically associate meditation with down here. So we're going to link how the heart and the heart center plays a very important role in waking up from our mindlessness, from our unconscious behaviors. I don't have anything additional to say for today. Great job.
Thank you.
See you all next week. Thank you.